Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey. The Moms I Know is your go-to source for motivation, inspiration, and resources, and real conversation about motherhood and parenting with intention. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Children Learn What They Live by Dorthy Law Nolte.
Welcome to the Moms I Know. Good morning. Linsey, I love that quote. That's been a quote that we have heard and used and believe in deeply. And so thank you so much for being here with us today. So I want to introduce Linsey, a good friend of mine. Linsey Hurley has lived in Massachusetts all of her life. She attended the University of Massachusetts Amherst with a BA in agricultural economics, a minor in Asian studies, and international agriculture. She has worked on various farms, farmers markets, food co-ops, health food stores, and as a postpartum doula. She became certified as a holistic health coach and is now working primarily with energy healing technologies. Linsey has two grown children, Joe, who lives with his wife and daughter in Thailand, and Elizabeth, who is married with 3 children and lives in Istanbul. Linsey unschooled Joe and Elizabeth from grades 3 to 9. So welcome, Linsey. It's so exciting to have you here today and to hear a little bit about your story. And you were homeschooling at a time when things were just getting going with this homeschool movement. So we're really excited to hear from you today.
Thank you. Well, so my kids, they were born in 1986 and 88. And when they went to school, I was never a homeschooling thinking person at all. But my sister was. She had been a teacher and she was a radical, if you truly love your children, you'll homeschool them kind of person. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it different. So I sent my kids to school, but there was, when they started going, a multi-level class, which really appealed to me. I love the Waldorf model of kids just working in it with the same teacher for years and multi-ages and stuff. So I was actually a teacher's aide in that class. But it turned out to be kind of a not a great situation. The teacher was really just kind of hanging out doing nothing, and she had pets and favorites, and she was really kind of mean to the kids and a lot of ugly stuff that I didn't like. And after my son had finished third grade, and my daughter had finished first grade, they had a horrible year, both of them. All different things had happened. And we were at that point, the following year, planning to move into this town. We're in Acton, Massachusetts, which is kind of known for having the best schools. And at the end of the year in Watertown, where we were sitting down having our after-school snack, last day of school, and they both said, "Mom, can we homeschool like our cousins?" And I couldn't say no, because the school had been such a nightmare. And for me as well, as an aide, it was just so many awful things happened. And I just said, okay, I guess. And I didn't know what I was getting into. And so that whole summer I was studying and reading and connecting and finding things. So then we moved to this town of Acton, where there are no homeschoolers because people moved to this town for the schools. So we were kind of alone. And I remember our very first day of school, quote unquote, and I wanted the kids to do some math, and I bought a math notebook and gave it to my little second grade daughter, and we did it, and then I gave her a journal to enter into, and her journal writing was, "I hate homeschooling. I want to go to school on the bus." And I said, okay, I guess I'm doing things wrong here. So I had a lot of learning to do, and I did find some other people in the area who were homeschooling, and I learned about unschooling, and that was when everything got so great. And we just played and played and played and played and, made play dates and had a blast. And it was really great after that. And, so the whole philosophy of unschooling, as you know, is just kids learn through their play. And one of the quotes I remember, there was a magazine at the time called Growing Without Schooling with John Holt. And I remember one of the quotes a mother said, she said, I homeschool because I have so much to learn. And I felt like that was me. I just learned so much. And so I just called my son this morning to ask him if he had any, particular memories of, what he loved about homeschooling. So we got to talk, and he said he remembers one morning I came downstairs, and after probably a year of playing, and I said, okay, kids, today we got to learn something. What do you want to learn? And he said they started talking about the Roman Empire. And so we went to the library and got the I, Claudius series, which I remember my grandmother watching, but I had no interest in it. And they were thrilled. They just loved it. Books about ancient Rome and this and that. And he said, I just remember feeling so empowered that I could learn what I wanted to. I could go get books and learn, my interests. And he just said that's what it was. He was totally empowered.
I love that, because that's really what we're talking about. We talk about living and learning together and, family school. And, it's not homeschool. We're out in the world most of the time, and we're learning in so many different ways. And also you hit on that, that children's work is play. And so in the very early years, that is the way that they learn. And then also I love what you said about how you needed to learn. And sometimes we talk about unlearning or deschooling, or, that this is the way it was supposed to look. And that then we as the parents learn, oh, wait a minute, our children have this natural capability. And it sounds like you really allowed them to have that. But I love that your son said he felt so empowered. And that's, that's such a huge part of this, because I was talking with a friend of mine recently who's working with young adults right now. And she said that they all want her to tell them exactly what to do. And I see that this, the system that, as we go through, we're told what to do. And so empowering our children to take charge of their own learning. So can you give us some other examples of, like when we say it's just playing all the time? Well, of course, it's learning in everything that they're doing. So can you give us, a couple more examples of things that you would do over the years with your children, and just kind of a little bit about how your days would go?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so I remember when I first started, one of the people who I got some advice from about homeschooling, she said, you just live a rich and full life and invite your kids to join in. And so we would just live. I would try to, in the morning, put out something that was fun, like a crafts project, or we had that GIMP stuff, or just some things to do arts and crafts on the table in the morning along with breakfast. And then we'd usually sit around and read for a while, and then we'd make a play date and go out. We went to museums a lot, and they loved that. I hated museums when I was young. They were the most boring place. But when the kids were going and just there, no pressure to be intellectual, they loved it. I remember my husband was a beekeeper, and so the kids would help him harvesting the honey, and they'd come out in the garden with us and work in the garden. And in terms of, so playing with their friends was always about negotiating and learning how to accommodate everybody. And, Joey was for a while, he was into rockets. And so he would have to get together with friends and set it up and have to, share and just work cooperatively, and then do certain calculations or thoughts about where it would go, and just do research into science for that. I mean, it was just very, very organic, and it was not structured. And that was a fear that I had, because I really did so little structure. We read together, and they kept journals, but I didn't correct a lot. So then by the time high school came, they both wanted to go to high school. At 9th grade, he wanted to go more just to meet kids. And that's what he was saying today. He said, I was really nervous because I thought they didn't have skills. They didn't have the math skills or the reading and writing skills. But he said, it was amazing how easy it was to just catch up. He caught right up. And his first report card, he got, I think he got D's. He didn't do great, but he didn't care. And I remember my husband, he was so great. Joe brings his report card home and goes, "You got a D. Oh, that's great." just so not judgmental. And the grades didn't matter to Joe. And he caught up and did better over his years. Elizabeth was a little more concerned about the grades and fitting in and stuff. And so she did want to be there. But it wasn't quite as easy for her, but she did fine. Anyway, but I got off track with the days. Yeah, we just, whatever, they painted their own bedrooms. They, whatever they wanted to do, we just kind of laughed and said, whatever.
Well, it sounds like that quote about living a rich life and inviting your children to come along. I've found that to be so true. And if we're reading together and we're looking at, incredible historical events, and we're just, human beings, we just want to be learning all the time. If we're not, John Taylor Gatto talks about being dumbed down. And so much of the system, I think, is just this rote memorization. And so when children are allowed to flourish like that, we have so many parallels in our family in terms of, the early years. And then also you've already spoken about some of the mentors. So, a group that you were with and John Holt, John Taylor Gatto, you started researching these early homeschoolers. Mm-hmm. Did that help to put your mind at ease as you saw these families?
Oh, yeah. Grace Llewellyn also, the Teenage Liberation Handbook. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it helped a lot. And hearing stories about what different kids did. But I don't know, probably most of us still, all along the way, I had a pit of self-doubt and fear. And, is it really the best? Am I doing, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it doesn't really, I just always said, well, I'll know when they're grown. And because you don't know. But the thing is, no parent knows really that we're doing the perfect thing, right? But I remember once reading a study about children and who thrives and who doesn't, and who ends up in trouble and who doesn't. And one of the things they found of the kids who do well is they have dinner with their family. That was about all they could come up with as a common denominator. So it's pretty simple, just letting your kids know you love them and you're there for them. There's just, everybody's got their different ways, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just loving your kids. But and I have to say also, probably many of you felt this too, people who had their kids in school, that one thing I noticed drastically as soon as I started the homeschooling was how better they got along. The fight stopped. They just got along because, they weren't pressured to get up and get out the door in the morning or whatever. They were much happier people from the very first day we started. So people who have their kids in school and just say, oh, I could never do that. I could never be home with my kids all day. It changes. They just are different people when you just let go, right?
We've seen that over and over. I saw that with my own children. I know, Sheila, you've experienced that, and we've seen it with so many families, is that when we're together as a family, some of that outside negative social influence drops away as well. So, yeah. And, you're in the New England area. So, you talked about the schools in the area. And you were starting to homeschool at a time when you probably had to explain yourself. Did you? Oh, yeah. And you already spoke to this idea that, you doubted all the way along, but you'd know when your kids were grown. Yeah. How did you respond to maybe family members or friends that were concerned about your decision?
It was hard. And that's the thing. It's always hard to go out of the box and be different, isn't it? And so that's why you find your tribe, you find a support network to just always reinforce you. I live in a cooperative neighborhood. I live in a co-housing community. And so we're very, unified kind of community. And I was amazed at how little interest there was from other people about this homeschooling. They were all very academic, and you got to send your kids to school. And I'll never forget one friend, I think of her a lot. She said, Linsey, you really should get your kids out more. And now here they live in Thailand and Turkey. It's like, I don't know, somehow they got out.
But we've seen that. Yeah, we've seen that as well. And I got that. People said you're sheltering them. It's like, well, no, we're just living and being together as a family and loving each other and, adventuring out all over the place, but that there was still that feeling of being sheltered because we weren't sending them to school. And as if that's, the only way to do this. So then tell us a little bit about their journey after they finished high school.
Well, they both went to college. My son actually got himself into quite a lot of trouble. He was a little rebel, and he had a DUI record and all that stuff. And, he went through his stuff. But he decided to travel, and he went traveling the world. And then by the time he got halfway across the world to Thailand, he was out of money. So he had to find work. He walked into a local junior high school and said, "Do you need an English teacher?" And they said, "Yep." And he got a job, and he's been there ever since. That was like 10 years ago. He said he wanted to know that he could build a community of his own. And that's why he wanted to put down his roots there and stick around for a while. And he's done that. And now he has built a sustainable villa in Thailand. It's a big tourist region, but he's built a place out of earth bags, and it's, insulated, and it's just an incredible place. And of course now he can't rent it out because of the COVID, but he just jumps and does things. And his father's a little bit like that, but I think he's even more so because he was just allowed to not be held back and to think for himself and to just dive. He's I hope he moves back someday, and I think he'd like to someday. But he did say talking this morning about homeschooling, he said he does not want his daughter going to public schools, knowing what he knows now. He just, I don't know that he wants to homeschool, but he's got to figure something out. You think for yourself. Anyway, and my daughter, so she decided when she finished college that she wanted to, she somehow got it in her head that there were no jobs in America. This was in 2011. So she got a job teaching English in South Korea, and she just went, and the pay was great. She paid off all her college loans and met this Turkish guy, and that's why she's in Turkey. You just never know where their lives are going to go. But I do attribute that, when they were homeschooled, they were so different. And that's the thing. They've grown up not being afraid to be different. And so they just aren't afraid to do things like all, these homeschooled kids. They just, because they know they're different. They know, that they don't fit into the box. So they just do their own things. So they're great parents and great kids.
They both have children now?
Yep. He has a daughter, and my daughter has three kids. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, when we talk with people in the beginning, they're like, "I don't know if I can do this, and we don't know how this is going to turn out." And, it's so interesting to see, our children also traveled abroad. Sheila's children, her two older, have traveled, and so this idea that, that we give them roots and wings and off they go. And I did think that at least one of mine would probably end up living abroad, but they did both come home and settled back in the United States. But, we want them to have that sense of adventure. We want them to be brave and independent and to follow their hearts. And so it's so interesting to see that with this unconventional and yet now becoming so much more mainstream. I mean, we've really seen the homeschool movement change so much over the last 20 years, and it's so much more acceptable. It's so much more known. I think that people have fewer misconceptions about it, but there's still those all the time. And so, I also experienced that trying to explain to people. So it's just fascinating to see.
It's all, whenever you go out of the box, people are going to challenge and question and judge and, right now is a time, I think, with this COVID that everybody is having to re-examine everything. And the parents are being forced to homeschool. And I just really hope that a lot of them are able to embrace this experience that, it can be good to be with your families and you can, explore a little bit more freely on your own. I'm not in touch with that world anymore. I'm an empty nester, so, and most of my peers are as well. So I don't know what's going on with the parents of young kids at home.
I like what you said in the beginning, and I think a lot of parents or listeners will relate to it. How you said how when you came to homeschooling first, it was hard. It was like it was supposed to be this way, and it didn't feel that way. It felt a little clunky, and I think that's what parents are feeling right now. And so I really like how you kind of brought us through, and you cultivated lifelong learning in your home. You know, one of my favorite homeschool memories was the reading of classical literature, things that I didn't get as much when I was younger, but really reading the classics with my children, I think, is my best homeschool memory. So the question I have is, what advice would you give to these people who are coming into summer months and thinking they're not going to have their kids in school next year because they don't want, like Ms. Maria said about the CDC guidelines, is that kids will be wearing masks, kids will not be able to play on the playground, kids, these certain things. What advice would you give to those families that are going to homeschool and really look at unschooling as a really good option? Because that's what I did with my children, and Maria was our mentor. And I also want to touch on that piece, kind of affirm that piece of mentors, because I think that is really key when you homeschool.
Mm-hmm. Advice. Well, I guess I'm thinking of what my son said this morning, to ask the kids what they want. Ask them what they would like to do. And given the parameters that they're dealing with now, I mean, realistically, what do we want to do? And, I don't know what's ahead, what we'll be allowed to do in the fall. And, we think one thing now, but it could be very different from what it is. But to just keep in touch and talk about what we can do and listen to the kids. That's the whole thing, is to let them share and hear what they want to do. And then share what you want to do. But certainly this is a time to slow down and to do a lot of reading and do a lot of crafts and do those inside things that kids adore doing, and exploring those things. I guess, I mean, if I can't imagine these kids not getting outside and playing in the summer, but who knows what's ahead.
I know.
Just create it. Kids have always, they blow me away how well they handle things. So much better than we adults do.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they're just amazing. So,
my son's graduating high school tomorrow. He too decided to go to school for high school and is graduating high school tomorrow. And I'm having the harder time with it than he is, where he has to be in a car parade, can't open their windows. It's just so, it's different.
Wow.
But we've talked about the resilience of children and their natural ability to adapt and to, I want to come back again to this piece of empowerment. And I think that that's when we can empower ourselves, when we can empower our children. And that doesn't mean, I think sometimes people see this as just, letting kids make all the decisions and rule the roost. And that's not the case. It's this family dynamic. It's listening to everyone and really working together. And so I think that when we listen to our children, when we help them be a part of the planning, when we can come into this, the family agreements and just see what works for everyone and be respectful of each other, then the children will blossom. And yes, we don't know what the future looks like. And, it's going to be different, I think, in every state and different countries. And so we just have to look at what's ahead of us and say, how can we do this in a way that's going to help the children flourish and learn in the way that they learn best? And, of course, we hope that they'll be able to be outdoors quite a bit. And I think, Sheila, you and I have talked a little bit about, the outdoor schools, maybe those will be flourishing more with children being outside more and hopefully not confined. But when we don't know what's ahead, we have to just be adaptable. So
one of the things I want to remember that was always something I got from my John Holt peers was the value of boredom. And that's certainly what we're getting now, right? Do you know that the company 3M, they have all kinds of inventions. Do you know that they would put into their day 1 hour of nothing to do for all of their staff to just whatever they want. They can sleep. They can go get a haircut, whatever. And it's just to allow the creative juices to flow. And so this is certainly a time to embrace that possibility and let the kids even be bored and who knows what kind of things they'll develop from that or move forward with.
Well, out of boredom comes creativity. And whenever children would say that they were bored, I would always say, that's so wonderful. It's an opportunity to figure out something to do. And I was talking with my mother yesterday. She's 89 and, we're, here into several months of this. And she says, I don't do boredom. And it's just so cute because she always finds something to do. And so she stays positive and she stays creative. And so I think that our children have been so overscheduled. And so this is a wonderful opportunity. So you said that earlier. It's a time to slow down. It's a time to be together. And so I'm hoping that families will listen to this and say, okay, we can do this and we can be together as a family and we can slow down and we can homeschool or unschool if we choose. And that our kids are going to turn out just fine. And also there's no guarantees anytime. And so I love that you checked in with your son also to get his input and his memories. So thank you. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd want to share?
Oh, no, but I just, I am grateful for this podcast, for you guys doing this work. I think this is such an important message to get out. And I am thrilled that this movement is growing, that people are doing this more and more. And I do think that right now is a time for us to really reevaluate everything as a society. And schooling is one of the huge things, and educating our children and how we're doing everything. So no, I think this is a really good time for a cosmic enema for our society.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, well, if people want to talk to you more, if they have other questions for you about your journey or some of the other work that you're doing, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, I'd love it if anybody wants to talk. My email address is Linsey, Linsey, at newview, NEWVIEW.org. And that would be the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay, great. And we'll put that in our show notes too. Linsey, we so appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today and to give this sort of longer view to especially those people who are thinking, how's this all going to turn out? So we really appreciate this, and we just send our best to you and your family.
Thank you.
All over the world. So
thank you. This has been a joy and an honor to be part of this. Thank you.
Well, take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To get the show notes and resources mentioned in today's episode, visit themomsiknow.com. For information on Maria's programs, visit thefutureoffamily.com. And for information on Sheila's programs, visit purplebeetfamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes and follow us on Instagram at The Moms I Know Podcast. Until next time, have a joyful family journey.